They say peace is priceless until someone powerful decides it belongs to them. For Noah, peace looked like sunlight filtering through pine trees, the smell of wood and coffee, and the soft creak of a porch swing. His cabin wasn't just a house, it was his refuge, a small wooden heart beating quietly in the middle of a green, whispering forest. Every morning, he woke to the sound of wind brushing through tall pines, the same sound that had healed his mind after years of noise and deadlines. Here, he could hear himself think. Here, he felt safe. But even the most peaceful places have invisible borders, and Noah's cabin had one name carved into its fate: the HOA. For months, the Homeowners Association had been a distant irritation. A few notices, some rules about fences, and letters written in polite but threatening language. Noah followed most of them, paying dues, keeping his property clean. But he avoided one person whenever he could: Madam HOA. She wasn't just the head of the board. She was the kind of woman people whispered about behind closed doors, sharp-tongued, power-hungry, and always watching. Her polished smile hid a hunger for control. Residents said she could make your life miserable if you didn't fall in line. Noah didn't believe all of it until the day she showed up at his cabin. It was a quiet afternoon. The sun had dipped halfway behind the tree line, painting everything gold. Noah was fixing a loose hinge on his porch door when he heard the crunch of tires on gravel. A shiny black car rolled to a stop near his gate. From it stepped Madam HOA, elegant as ever, clipboard in hand, sunglasses perfectly balanced on her nose. Even the way she shut the car door sounded like authority. She walked up the narrow path toward him, heels clicking sharply against the wood. "Noah," she greeted with a too-sweet smile, "I came to see your cabin." "It's lovely, even better in person." Noah wiped his hands on a towel, unsure where this was going. "Thank you," he said carefully. Madam HOA tilted her head, her tone dripping with charm. "I was actually thinking maybe I could use it for the weekend. Just a small private party, some close friends, a little music, nothing too wild." For a moment, Noah thought he'd misheard her. A party? In his home? "You want to use my cabin?" he asked politely, forcing a smile. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but that's not possible. I work from here. This place is my office and home both. I've got important files, equipment, personal items. It's not easy to pack all that up for a weekend." Her smile faltered. The sweetness in her voice curdled into something harder. "Oh, come now, Mr. Noah. Don't be so rigid. It's only 2 days. Move your things to one side." Simple. She took a slow step forward, lowering her voice. "Besides, I've already told my guests the venue is set. This cabin will be perfect for my party." Noah's calm began to thin. He straightened his back and spoke firmly. "Ma'am, with respect, this isn't a rental property. It's my home. I pay my dues, I maintain my land, and I don't owe anyone my space for their entertainment. You can't just decide to host a party here." The air between them stiffened. Her eyes narrowed behind her sunglasses. When she spoke again, the friendliness was gone. "Maybe you don't understand who you're talking to, Mr. Noah." She pointed her clipboard toward him like a weapon. "You'll pack your things by Saturday morning and vacate the cabin, just for the weekend. It's not a request." Then, with a sharp turn, she walked back to her car. The tires spun on the gravel, flinging dust as she sped away. Noah stood frozen for a moment, the echo of her words twisting in his head. "Pack your things by Saturday morning." He clenched his fists. Anger bubbled beneath his calm exterior. "Who does she think she is?" he muttered. "This is my home. I'm not going anywhere." As the evening faded, the forest grew quiet again, but the peace no longer felt the same. Noah sat on the porch steps, staring at the fading light between the trees. The cabin looked so innocent, its windows glowing softly, the smell of pine smoke drifting from the chimney. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that something dark had entered his world. He replayed the conversation again and again, thinking about her tone, the certainty, the ownership. She wasn't asking. She was claiming. A cold wind brushed past him, rattling the chimes hanging from his porch. The sound sent a chill through his spine. For the first time, the forest didn't feel like a friend. It felt like a warning. He spent the next hour pacing inside, half tempted to call a lawyer, half laughing at the absurdity of it. She can't actually do that, he told himself. No one can just take over someone's home. There are laws, rights. But deep down, a knot of unease began to grow. People like Madam HOA didn't play fair. She had power, influence, and worse, followers. Noah moved through the cabin, locking each door and checking the windows. The soft click of each lock made him feel slightly safer, but not entirely. His laptop sat on the desk near the window, the glow of an unfinished document still open. He stared at it, then at the small security camera mounted discreetly in the corner. He'd installed it for safety months ago, mostly out of habit. Now he wondered if it might become more important than he ever imagined. Outside, the forest darkened completely, the sky filled with faint stars, and the air smelled of rain. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called, slow, hollow, like the forest itself, was holding its breath. Noah sat back in his chair, staring out at the trees. He tried to convince himself that everything would be fine, that she'd calm down, that maybe it was just a power trip and nothing more. But in the back of his mind, a quiet whisper lingered, a thought that refused to die. What if she actually tries it? What if she really shows up? He shook his head, exhaling slowly. No, he said to himself. People like her don't cross that line. But Noah was wrong. By the time the sun rose again, the line between right and power would blur completely. And Madam HOA was already planning her next move. It was past midnight when the sound came, a crash, loud and sharp. Noah woke instantly, heart pounding. He heard glass shatter, then footsteps outside. He grabbed a flashlight and ran toward the living room. The window was broken, the fence outside torn apart. The lock on the gate had been smashed. Shadows moved near the trees, 2, maybe 3 figures. Then the roar of a car engine as they sped away. Noah stepped outside, breathing heavily. His yard was a mess. The garden lights were broken, the porch railing smashed. It looked like someone had tried to destroy everything. His hands trembled as he called the police. Within an hour, the same officers arrived. And of course, Madam HOA followed. She looked around and shook her head dramatically. "Oh dear," she said in a sarcastic tone. "What a mess. Seems like someone really wanted attention." Noah turned sharply. "You think I did this myself? You think I'd destroy my own property?" She shrugged. "Maybe. You were desperate not to let us use your cabin, right?" The argument grew louder. The police had to step between them. "Enough," one of the officers said. "We'll find out who did this. Let's not make assumptions." Madam HOA smirked again, stepping closer to Noah. "You made this harder than it had to be," she whispered. "You should have just given me the weekend." Noah stared at her, rage and disbelief colliding. He knew now, this wasn't about a party, it was personal, and Madam HOA was ready to go further than he ever imagined. It was past midnight when the sound came, a crash, loud and sharp. Noah woke instantly, heart pounding. He heard glass shatter, then footsteps outside. He grabbed a flashlight and ran toward the living room. The window was broken, the fence outside torn apart. The lock on the gate had been smashed. Shadows moved near the trees. 2, maybe 3 figures, then the roar of a car engine as they sped away. Noah stepped outside, breathing heavily. His yard was a mess. The garden lights were broken, the porch railing smashed. It looked like someone had tried to destroy everything. His hands trembled as he called the police. Within an hour, the same officers arrived. And of course, Madam HOA followed. She looked around and shook her head dramatically. "Oh dear," she said in a sarcastic tone. "What a mess." "Seems like someone really wanted attention." Noah turned sharply. "You think I did this myself? You think I'd destroy my own property?" She shrugged. "Maybe. You were desperate not to let us use your cabin, right?" The argument grew louder. The police had to step between them. "Enough," one of the officers said. "We'll find out who did this. Let's not make assumptions." Madam HOA smirked again, stepping closer to Noah. "You made this harder than it had to be," she whispered. "You should have just given me the weekend." Noah stared at her, rage and disbelief colliding. He knew now, this wasn't about a party. It was personal. And Madam HOA was ready to go further than he ever imagined. Saturday came with an uneasy heat that made the pines sticky and the air heavy. Noah worked most of the day at his desk, pretending to focus on spreadsheets and conference calls while his mind replayed every threat, every insult. He had stayed awake half the previous night, scanning hidden camera footage and backing up files. A small, stubborn effort to make sure the truth could not be tossed aside. As evening settled and the sun bled orange behind the ridge, a sound came that made his stomach drop. The rumble of engines and laughter. From the porch window, he watched 3 cars pull up the drive. Madam HOA stepped out first, perfectly dressed. Hair and makeup immaculate, as if she'd planned this entrance. Behind her were women in flashy outfits and a line of tall, broad-shouldered men. Guards, all of them quiet and severe, like statues that might move at her command. They moved toward the cabin in a cluster, cordial smiles on their faces, cups and coolers in hand. Madam HOA's smile was different now, not warm, but triumphant. She swept her clipboard up like a trophy and looked directly at the house. The sight of them, the casual confidence of a group that believed rules bent for them, made Noah's anger flare. He stepped out onto the porch before they could reach the steps. "You're not having any party here," he said, voice steady but low. "This is my home." "I told you no." Madam HOA paused, then laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Oh, Noah," she said. "You'll see. We have everything under control. Just step aside." She nodded, and the guards closed in. Noah braced for negotiation, for reasoning. Instead, 2 of the guards reached him with practiced calm and put strong hands on his arms. He tried to pull back, but the grip was iron. One of the women, a friend of Madam HOA, in a sleek dress and high heels, stepped forward and gestured toward the living room. "Just enjoy the evening," she said to Noah, voice light and almost mocking. Then they guided him inside, like a reluctant guest. Noah's cheeks burned with a red-hot mix of shame and fury. The guards positioned themselves near the windows and doors as the women unpacked boxes, set up lights, and put out platters. The music started low, then climbed. The party looked like any other. Laughter, clinking glasses, people dancing in the soft dusk. But what it was doing in his house made it feel contaminated. At one point, Noah lunged forward, pushing a table between the guests and his desk, where his files sat. "You have no idea what you're doing," he said. "You can't just—" A tall guard stepped in and blocked him with his body. "Sir, please calm down," the man said. There was no malice in the guard's voice, only a practiced, professional tone that made Noah feel like an intruder in his own home. Madam HOA sauntered over like someone making a scene at a theater. She stood in the center of the living room, smiling to the others as if she had built an empire from the moment. "Relax," she told Noah, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Enjoy the music. Have a drink. Tonight is about community." Noah's hands were trembling. He remembered the tiny cameras he'd hidden earlier that week. A dozen inconspicuous dots tucked behind picture frames. In the eaves, behind the porch light. They were invisible to the eye, but capturing everything. The way the guards moved, the way Madam HOA barked orders, the faces that laughed while his life was being rearranged around them. He had hoped to avoid escalation, but now there was nowhere to hide. The party pushed on into the night. Drinks flowed. People danced near the windows where the guards stood, shadows stretching long. Several times, guests drifted close to his office door, peeking inside, making jokes about how strict he must be to have a home office in the woods. Noah clutched his phone in his pocket, feeling the weight of every breath. At one point, Madam HOA pulled him aside, standing so close he could smell the expensive perfume. "For show," she whispered, almost conspiratorial. "See? You're making it difficult for everyone. If you just cooperate, none of this would happen." Her friends tittered. The words were designed to humiliate, to remind him of the choice he'd made. Late into the evening, when the laughter had reached its loudest pitch, something shifted. People began to collect themselves, folding napkins, stuffing leftover food into bags. Madam HOA spoke into the shoulder of one of her guards. "We'll leave it clean," she announced, and then turned to Noah with a cold smile. "You stopped us once. Tonight, you watched us enjoy your place. Consider that a lesson." She kissed the cheek of one of her friends and walked toward the door as if she owned the sunset. The guards opened the cars, loading speakers, coolers, the tents, everything that could be evidence of the night. They moved with efficient disregard, erasing traces as they went. Someone even wiped away footprints and smoothed the lawn. Noah watched, stunned. "You can't just—" he began. But the words dissolved when another guard, the one who had watched him the closest, met his eyes. For a heartbeat, there was something almost like pity there. Then the man looked away. When the cars finally pulled away, engines purring into the night, the porch was littered with confetti and a single red cup left on the railing. The music echoed down the lane until it faded into the pines. The house smelled like wine and perfume and something else, the metallic edge of injustice. Noah didn't sleep. He stayed awake watching the hidden feeds on his laptop. The small cameras had done their job. The footage was clear. Madam HOA giving orders, the guards escorting Noah, the friends moving through his house like they were entitled to each piece of furniture. He backed everything up, time-stamped files, and copied them to multiple drives. Relief and a fierce satisfaction washed over him. Evidence, finally, that could not be gaslit away. At dawn, he sent the footage to several neighborhood groups and to local community message boards, attaching formal complaints and a draft of the harassment case he planned to file. He included timestamps, the license plates of the cars, and the names he could identify. The files spread faster than he expected. Messages pinged through his phone with shock and outrage. Neighbors he barely knew messaged, asking what had happened, offering statements and support. The reaction was immediate and loud. People who had once been quiet at board meetings now posted video clips, screenshots, and condemnations. A thread grew into a chorus. "We don't want an HOA that behaves like this." A few residents shared their own small suspicions, small broken fences, unexplained fines, the quiet pressure that had gone on for years. Momentum built. Madam HOA's glossy control began to crack under the weight of public scrutiny. Faced with growing outrage, Madam HOA did what she always did when cornered. She left. She resigned her position within days, citing personal reasons. Many neighbors cheered, but Noah kept the footage intact and filed a formal harassment complaint and a civil suit seeking accountability. Resignation, he knew, was not the same as justice. He wanted a public, legal record so that no one else could be steamrolled the way he had been. Noah sat on his porch the morning after the party with a mug of cold coffee. The sun felt dull rather than warm, but the air smelled clean. He thought about the long road ahead. Depositions, hearings, the grind of court files. He was tired in a new way, but determined. This wasn't only about him. This was about setting a line, showing the neighborhood that power without consequence would no longer be tolerated. When the first intake clerk called to confirm his paperwork, he felt surprisingly calm. "Do it," he told her. "Make it matter." He wouldn't take satisfaction in revenge. He wanted prevention. He wanted the next Madam HOA to think twice before ordering guards, before crossing thresholds that weren't hers. The cameras were quiet now, but their recordings hummed on hard drives like a promise. Noah knew the legal fight would be long. He sipped his coffee, tightened his jaw, and let the pines whisper around him, not as threats now, but as witnesses.